many of us are still hanging on to our CB radios. Hell, I have a Cobra 29, a Unit and Elite, and a General E that were hot rodded by Jericho back in the day, and I love them. I have so many fond memories of talking crap on the trail and running convoys down the 99 with our old CBs. My handle, Desert Dog, has been lighting up 27 megahertz for over 30 damn years.
Listen, give me 5 minutes. We're going to put some moves on that mother.
But the writing has been on the wall for the CB radio for a while now. And Infectious Off-Road was actually one of the last holdouts to still use CBs. You know, because we'd rather spend money on beer, crack whores, and broken ORI struts. You know, we'd rather spend money on that than, you know, a new radio that works better. But it's probably finally time for us to step into the 21st century with everyone else. You know, if we can dump Bud Light and Fox News, we could also move on from the CB radio, right? About 20 years ago, I got my ham license and added ham radios to my rigs as a supplement to my CB radios. The old buggy guys still use 2 meter today, but, you know, on frequencies that require the Mars cap mod. But nothing beats VHF frequencies for receptions inside of rocks and canyons on the trail. You know, VHF is the best, and I'll concede that. But a really good VHF mobile unit and the gear to run it is expensive. It requires a difficult test and license, and it's complicated to use for most people, especially you Generation Zers out there that can't even figure out how to Google things. I've slowly watched all the off-road clubs nearby, or most of them, switch over to GMRS over the last 3 years. And almost every off-road event, like Jeepers Jamboree, and all the Cal 4-wheel runs run GMRS now. If you monitor GMRS channel 16 in any off-road area now, it's like CB chatter you used to hear back in the 80s and 90s. It's actually pretty cool. So that many people have switched over from CB to GMRS. Us off-roaders have always used channel 16 on our CBs because, you know, 4x4 or 4 times 4 equals 16. And that was all the damn math any rock crawler needed to know. And it seems as if that same train of thought bled over to GMRS. So now, Infectious Off-Road is officially switching over to GMRS for our trail communications. In this video, I'll explain the reasons that we're moving over to GMRS and how to select gear and set your rig up. Like I stated a minute or two ago, VHF is the way to go for rock crawling here in the canyons and mountains of California. But the cost, level of technical expertise, and licensing requirements can be problematic to most people. I've come to the conclusion that people are just too damn lazy to deal with that. The Trailblazers actually got a club license to use a few VHF channels on their runs, but you need a pre-programmed commercial radio or an illegally modified radio to transmit out of band on those frequencies. So most of them are running ham radios with the Mars cap mod, or they'll jailbreak a Chinese radio to transmit out of band. But we would never do anything like that, would we? Your average CB radio puts out about 3 or 4 watts of power. And, you know, of course, you could do a little bit of modifying to them to get a little bit more than that. But in comparison, a GMRS mobile unit can legally transmit with 50 watts of power in the upper frequencies. GMRS absolutely destroys CB when it comes to range. You know, even a really cheap GMRS mobile unit that has 15 watts in it, you know, will basically have better range than any CB radio that you ever had in your Jeep or Toyota. Also, most modern mobile GMRS radios allow you to use repeaters. Even a lot of the cheap handhelds now allow you to use GMRS repeaters. While ham radio repeaters are shutting down, GMRS repeater locations are actually growing right now. Even the Rubicon Trail has a really nice GMRS repeater now. So GMRS is the fastest growing segment of the radio world right now. GMRS is so hot right now.
So hot right now.
So the performance of a GMRS mobile unit is going to be way better than a CB, better than a handheld ham, and almost as good as a mobile ham radio. The cost to set up a GMRS mobile system is exactly the same as a CB radio. All you'll need is a radio, a cable, and an antenna. And that's it. You can get a 15 or 20 watt GMRS mobile unit cheaper than you can get a Cobra 29 CB radio these days. And setup with GMRS is actually easier than CB because it doesn't involve all the tuning that a CB antenna requires. Also, say goodbye to those ungodly 8-foot tall whip antennas and fragile fire sticks hanging off the back of your rig. GMRS antennas are tiny by comparison, and they're less fussy and easier to mount too. Your toughest choice is going to be your antenna for your GMRS system. Your main choices will be a 6 dB antenna and a 3 dB antenna. A 6 dB antenna focuses power in a really narrow path so it can really get out there in open areas. 6 dB antennas are great for tow rigs, daily drivers, and guys who wheel out in open deserts and open prairies, but they don't do a good job in rocky or hilly terrain or thick forested areas. A 3 dB antenna won't really get the range of a 6 dB antenna, but it's better in situations where there's obstructions to line of sight. So a 3 dB antenna is better for rock crawling, in my opinion, and they tend to be smaller antennas. 3 dB antennas come in many shapes and sizes, but most GMRS antennas are well under 18 inches or less, and even ghost antennas are an option for you. You can get an antenna specifically tuned just for GMRS frequencies, or you can get a dual band antenna if you have an outlaw radio.
I could tell you were an outlaw.
Is that right? Yeah, I'm kind of an outlaw.
There's also ground plane and no ground planed antennas, but in my experience, they all need a ground plane. So mount your antenna to a metal surface if you want your system to work adequately. You can get a cheap handheld GMRS radio like this excellent Radio Oddity GM30, or be an outlaw and use an unlocked Baofeng. But these transmit about the same power as your old CB radio did. So I use these for backup or loaner comms, or while I'm out hunting. And whatever you do, and I mean whatever you do not go to Amazon and buy one of these cheap Baofeng UV5R radios for $22. Do not do that. And if you do that, do not hold the 3 buttons down while you turn the radio on to completely unlock every frequency. Don't do that. And then after you do that, do not, and I mean do not, go onto Amazon and buy a Nagoya 771G antenna for the Baofeng UV5R, so you can transmit and receive on the GMRS frequencies. I highly recommend against that. To really take advantage of GMRS, I highly recommend a mobile unit to install in your 4x4. The big thing to watch out for with a mobile unit is selecting a radio capable of transmitting in wideband. Some radios, like this MXT 115, only transmit on narrowband, meaning that your voice might sound really faint when other people hear you on their wideband radios. Some radios, like this MXT 400 can be programmed to transmit on wideband, but you need an external mounted cable to hook up to your computer to program it to do that. And then some radios come from the factory ready to transmit on wideband. This excellent DB20G only cost about $100, and it's a great little radio, but some very bad people do the 10-second push button mod on these radios so they can be outlaws
You know, society's got no hold on this outlaw.
and transmit on all the frequencies, but you would never do that, would you? GMRS had kind of a rocky start because the licenses were $70 and they were only good for 5 years. And there was some kind of funky restrictions on using it. But last year, the FCC lowered the fee to $35 and your license is good for 10 years. It also requires no test. You just go online and you buy your license. It's basically so easy that even a Gen Zer or a Democrat can do it. And just when you thought paying $35 for 10 years of use was cool, it gets even better. Your GMRS license covers your entire family too, not just you. Even your aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and in-laws are covered to operate under your license. This will save Aaron's family a ton of money. The FCC seems to be encouraging people to use GMRS, in my opinion. And this is a good thing because when GMRS users start learning how to use repeaters, they'll be tempted to get their ham license and start communicating for real. In that sense, GMRS might be a gateway drug to ham radio, which isn't a bad thing. And did I mention GMRS is so hot right now?
So hot right now.
But those of us with a current ham radio license need to be aware that your ham license does not cover GMRS use. You'll need to purchase a separate GMRS license to transmit on GMRS frequencies. So shitheads like me end up with 2 separate licenses and 2 different call signs. The FCC really should include GMRS with our ham licenses. It's stupid that they don't. If you watched my video about 4x4 trail comms about 4 years ago, when I posted it on my YouTube channel, I was really pushing for VHF use. At the time, most rock buggies out west, off-road race ops, and even some hardcore Jeepers were using VHF, but over the years it kind of hit a dead end, primarily because the overlander segment of the off-road community, if you want to loosely refer to them as off-roaders, they all went to GMRS, and it kind of drove the market. But now almost all off-road clubs, organizations, and off-road events slowly transitioned over to GMRS. I was hoping that VHF would be the CB's replacement for off-road trail comms, but people just aren't willing to put in the effort to use the ham radio frequencies. Humans are just lazy creatures. But all's not lost because a GMRS radio gives you much better performance than our old CBs ever did, at the same price too. A GMRS radio is also easier to set up than a CB radio, in my opinion. And unlike ham radios, GMRS doesn't require an exam or the user to learn radio theory. So I guess GMRS was probably the path of least resistance to better performing trail comms, and that's ultimately why it got popular. But I know what you're going to say. I've spent the last 5 years, we've all actually in the club have spent the last 5 years watching so-called dudes with rooftop ARB tents and man buns using GMRS while they spot each other down fire roads. We normally sit back, pound beers, and heckle those guys, but now Desert Dog is asking you to use GMRS like the mall crawlers do. I know, sounds hypocritical. But as rock crawlers, let's make GMRS great. We'll let those microbrew sipping, ARB tent sleeping, bolt-on parts catalog, mall crawling overlanders know that rock crawlers own the airwaves again. When they see Nubs pounding silver bullets in a thong, or Floppy making dust angels on your door with his nutsack, they know they set up camp in the wrong spot. Hell, they might even dump GMRS and move to ham radio just to avoid us. So to my infectious off-road degenerates out there, go get yourself a GMRS radio. Go online and get your damn $35 license that's good for 10 years and step into the 21st century with me. I'll hold your hand and I promise to be very gentle.